Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Saunison, Director of the Language Center at the University of Minnesota, and I'm delighted to welcome you to another event hosted by the Language Collaboratory. We're a partnership for the advancement of intercollegiate dialogue on the teaching of languages and cultures, driven by language centers and institutes at the University of Iowa, the University of Michigan, University of Minnesota, Michigan State University, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Our aim is to provide collaborative professional learning opportunities for educators of language, culture, and literature. Our series this spring aims at furthering conversations that help uncover the complexities of striking a balance on professional, academic, and personal goals to achieve the well-being of instructors and students of languages. We address this issue through the lens of our current shared circumstances, approaching it from a variety of perspectives, building on the experiences and the expertise of individuals on our own campuses. We aim to share insights and to encourage interinstitutional dialogue, bridging the institutional distance and fostering a collaborative interchange of ideas. You are invited to contribute to what we hope will be a lively discussion. The sessions will be recorded and made available through each institution's website. We ask that you mute your microphone at the outset, that you use the tools in Zoom to contribute questions and comments in the chat, and during the open discussion period to raise your hand virtually prior to activating your microphone. Closed captioning is available through the live transcript button in the Zoom menu bar. Our next event will be held next Monday on March 8th at this time. Coming from the University of Minnesota, and addressing connections beyond the classroom. Today's host is the University of Iowa. I'll now turn the discussion over to Claire Francis, the Director of the Center for Language and Culture Learning at the University of Iowa, to introduce our guest speaker and to begin the discussion. Claire?
Thanks, Dan. Do you want to stop sharing so we have the full grid of everybody? I'm really happy to be here today with my colleague, Yasmine Ramadan. I don't have the gallery there. I have the gallery view now, so I can see her. Okay, hi, Yasmine. Yasmine is a professor of Arabic in the Department of French and Italian at the University of Iowa. And today in our series on balance, we're going to discuss balancing the classroom, the Zoom classroom, as well as the curriculum and the co-curriculum. So my first question for you, Yasmine, one of the things that I think we can all agree on is that we are sick and tired of Zoom. And so I'm wondering, how do you work to promote meaningful communication in the Zoom classroom in a way that motivates students through fatigue, especially now as the spring weather is beckoning them outside?
Thank you, Claire, and thank you, everybody. It's really my pleasure to join you today. I've had the good fortune of joining a few sessions, and I've actually found them really helpful in thinking through my own Zoom teaching this year. So I'm very happy and grateful to be here. I guess as I was thinking about our topic for today, one of the things that I started thinking about is what meaningful communication in the classroom means to me, and what I am trying to promote in my classroom community. And I think about it, I think, in a number of ways. The first is I try and make it obviously meaningful to my students. I teach primarily, or more often than not, I teach the second year of Arabic language, so intermediate 1 and 2. So students aren't at the very basic elementary level, but they still obviously have great limitations in what they're able to talk about, communicate, write about. And that's often, as with any language, very frustrating to them because I think they have bigger ideas than what their language capabilities allow them to share. So I try very hard to get them to think about the ways in which any activity that we're doing can include meaningful communication for them on multiple levels, even if the task at hand perhaps may be one of the more boring or frustrating or rote kind of exercises. So to make them think, for example, that even if we're doing a verb conjugation exercise that is not the most exciting thing for them, what are the ways that we can build in meaningful communication between the group in ways that is feels human and emotional and engaging to them. And one of the ways I try and do that is really kind of get to know them and include aspects of their interests and their personalities in my teaching. So you obviously learn a great deal about your students as a language instructor. I meet my students 4 times a week. So even on Zoom, that feels like a lot of time. I often get the same students for the entire year. So I feel like we actually build a relationship that is built on knowing things about them. And so trying to kind of take that into consideration in my teaching, in my examples, in material that I bring to the classroom. So to keep them, even if at times they're frustrated and tired, to make them feel like this is a place where I and the other people in our Zoom classroom care about kind of the details of each other's lives and can engage with that in meaningful ways. And so that's kind of the one level. And then obviously the other 2 levels are thinking about meaning, creating meaning and conveying meaning. And so is the task that we're doing, it's set up in a situation where they are in the target language able to convey some kind of meaning and that I'm moving them forward to build on kind of the pedagogy and the direction that we're headed. And so within Zoom, I think, and many of us are doing this, I have found things like the breakout rooms invaluable, because something that I really value in the classroom is their ability to work with each other constantly and to help each other, to learn from each other, to correct each other. And so while not the same, I found, and I think my students in their evaluations and responses have really appreciated the ability to have that space. And in some ways, it's nice because the breakout room, while in a classroom, you can still overhear what's going on. You might still have some kind of anxieties about producing language in front of others. The breakout rooms give them a little bit of privacy to kind of practice, make mistakes, and then come back to the group with a little bit more, at least some privacy and anonymity while they're doing that. And so I think that's one of the ways that I've tried to create moments of communication that mirror and even in some ways kind of extend the kind of work that I would do in the physical classroom. And so, you know, I have them do dialogues that then they record their videos and then I share them and the whole group can watch them. And some of that, it's not exactly the same as the classroom, but I found that there are tools that, despite my being sick and tired of Zoom, has actually, I think, worked quite well for students. Yes, so I think, yeah, I'll stop there for that one.
And this is a kind of a follow-up question on the greater sense of meaningfulness. And we didn't really talk about this, so I'm going ad lib here, Yasmine. But the sense that, you know, we are all connecting with each other virtually, constantly. And that's the idea that what's the point? You know, that students in this age group, and especially 18 to 22-year-old age group of college students, is that it's probably harder to convey that. And I'm wondering if any of your activities, your philosophy of teaching, if there's some way in which that is sort of battered and beleaguered, but you're going forward with, you know, and trying to get them to see that the language study is still so critical, because we're still in this need for it, you know, in this era of rising fascism, for example. Is there anything that you can, you know, any thoughts on that?
You know, I think it's actually, I mean, I think my students have definitely conveyed to me a sense of frustration and kind of general loss, and I think many of us have experienced that. And so, but I've also gotten the sense that they are finding some kind of sanctuary in our classroom spaces, whether online or not, because a lot of them are isolated. They might have to be isolated from family, right? They're not necessarily living with family members, etc. right now. So I think that actually has been, I've actually been surprised at how often my students are attending and regularly attending and have kept up with that, because I think they value the community that we are able to create. And beyond that they have found moments of connection through their continued Arabic. So whether it's kind of thinking about future things, future plans that they would like to make, the hope that study abroad will be possible, the hope that kind of their applications for jobs, etc., will be in a world in which seems more familiar. So what are the ways in which Arabic can contribute to that? And so thinking about those while being mindful of the reality, thinking about more hopeful options for them and the future in more in ways that can seem a little bit more brighter, I think is that they seem to be bringing that to the classroom space too. So just ways to encourage and foster that.
Yeah,
I
and
found real.
I was just going to add, I think one thing that we have in this profession is that we're very much about the human interaction and making meaning, right? And the fact that in language education, a priori is heading us, is that one way in which people can connect with other humans, right? These students. So I think the fact that they find your class and their language classes more generally, you know, and throughout this group, a sanctuary is probably pretty telling of how important this discipline is as well, right? But notwithstanding that, the students are overwhelmed. We hear that they feel like they're being piled on, and I'm assuming that's your experience with them. So how, again, do you kind of motivate them, whether it's in the classroom, but also support them, while also, and this is kind of tagging back to a previous one of previous Collaboratory, not sort of being dragged down yourself and achieving your own balance as an educator, and not, you know, a lot of we can just look in this Zoom. A lot of the people here are women and are called upon to do a lot of the emotional labor surrounding students, right? And how do you maintain your own balance while also supporting them through their feelings of being overwhelmed?
Yes, I mean, yes. I think we've all experienced this overwhelm, whether it's worrying about the health and safety of ourselves, but also our family. Obviously, not only that, but the political context. All of these things are kind of piled onto them as they are piled onto their faculty and instructors. So I definitely get the sense that. And they articulate it that this is just kind of a time of complete overwhelm for them. And so one of the things I've tried to do, and I think a number of the sessions here have touched upon that, is a flexibility that I perhaps did not necessarily have to such a great extent before the pandemic. And so to really kind of think about what what my pedagogical goals for the different assignments are, and what can afford to be delayed, to have makeups for, to have extra credit assignments or alternatives for. And so I've really expanded that, and I've tried to be more flexible with my students to a degree, because I think, again, this was probably true of many classes, but definitely with language learning, there's only such an extent that they can kind of quote unquote fall behind and be able to catch up, right? We move at such a pace that, you know, if there are things that they have not covered, then it's going to be difficult for them at some point to keep going in a way that is beneficial to them. And so keeping that in mind, I've tried to think of alternatives and be more flexible in that way. And also build in a flexibility of attendance that I perhaps did not really need previously, because I think for a lot of our students at the moment, just attending classes can sometimes feel a little bit too much. And so having alternatives and makeups for that, I think has benefited them. The other thing that that I would say to your question is, I definitely feel that this year has perhaps changed my approach in some ways. I think particularly when I began teaching as a young female instructor, I was very aware of the need for particular boundaries. And I think I was very conscious of that at all moments because of the ways in which students approach female professors and female instructors differently. And so I was perhaps a lot more, I had stricter boundaries, I think. But this year, that's been a little bit more difficult to maintain, and perhaps is not necessarily beneficial in my mind, because we're all struggling. And I think while I try to maintain positivity every morning, I see my students first thing in the morning every day. I've tried to be kind of positive and smiling and cheerful, but I'm also very open, and I set aside a time, perhaps not every day, but every few days, to kind of have a check-in and say to them, like, how's your week looking? This has been very difficult for me for this reason. And I might not have done that in the past, but it felt very disingenuous to me to continue and pretend that like everything, that my life seemed, that I'm fine, because I don't think most of us are, even if we have the kind of safety and luxury of teaching from home, which I'm very grateful for, but that we're still all encountering difficulties. And I think that showing that side has, I think, helped them and helped create a sense of community in the classroom that then extends, I think, and helps them want to perhaps try a little bit harder when they don't feel like it, work a little bit harder when it's difficult, because they're involved in something that is a group community and situation. So I think I've kind of, I don't know, opened up a little bit more as an instructor than I previously might have. And I think it's a hard balance, because I both really do want to help them and I see them struggling. I also am very honest about the limitations, try and provide resources and help them in as far as I can within the boundaries of their academic world, without taking on too much, and without, yeah.
I really like that you brought up the transparency and vulnerability that you have perhaps developed this year. I do know that that was a strategy I used when I was teaching at a different institution, a smaller institution, where there was a racial incident on campus, and nobody was okay with it, and we had to stop learning French that day. That was not the day that we were going to do anything in French. It was the day that we were going to talk about the incident. And so I think that, and in the way it affected me, and I think that you're absolutely right in that vulnerability and transparency creates that sense of community, and that you're all in it together. We had a quick question before we go to our last one, which was, let's see, Phil asked, is it possible to talk a little bit about the ways in which your students are able to make up missed classes? And somebody had a strategy for that as well, but if you had a thought.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't come up with anything super original or anything, but in the past I wouldn't necessarily have counted assignments that we would have been doing in class. If they had completed them out of class, that would not have necessarily contributed to their attendance and participation grade. But now I'm being a little bit more flexible about that, and especially for the most part, I don't feel like my students are trying to game the system this year. They're really just trying to survive. And so I want to help them get through their language requirement, finish their second year of, do what they have to do to kind of make it through and hopefully thrive in some way, and be ready to thrive even more when something like normalcy returns. And so some of the things that I have them submit recordings or something that they did at home that covers the material that we would have done, and just be a little bit less, I would penalize them less than perhaps I would under regular circumstances.
So this is my last question for Yasmine, and I want you to all think about it as I ask her this, so that you can share on the other side of her response. and we can open up the floor to this last question. I think there's probably a lot of great hive mind here that would have things to offer as well. One thing that's suffered this year is the co-curriculum. We all know how important things like language tables, conversation hours, or movie nights are for creating community, especially at the university level, and probably in high school. I'm not 100% sure how that works. And these are really important for creating what Felix, who may or may not be here, Felix Cronenberg, calls incidental language learning opportunities. So that's kind of suffered, and I'm wondering if you can speak to some of the ways that you've tried to keep that alive, those opportunities alive and thriving in the Zoom sphere.
Yeah.
Without overwhelming students again, because there's that fine line between what's, classwork and out of class learning.
Yeah, if I'm completely honest, that's probably suffered the most program and our students this year. We have kept conversation hour online on Zoom, and I just think that it's a lot for students to spend a day in front of their computer and then do other things on top of that. We have tried to kind of entice them by making it more thematic and getting some of their input into what they would like to include. So a lot of our students have expressed interest in food and food culture and cooking and that kind of thing. So the instructor who leads our conversation hour did a cooking demo in her house, which was really fun and the students enjoyed. She also kind of replicated a cafe situation for 1 week, and then they did the ordering and all had kind of a drink at home, etc. So we are trying to kind of make it thematic and pull from them some of the things that they're not getting in the classroom that perhaps they would want more of. It is a challenge though, because I think they don't want to spend more time in front of the computer. So I've been trying to use kind of different social media avenues to kind of put out more material that hopefully they will engage with, even if they're not coming to it in a group setting. So we tried to keep our Facebook page quite active. We just started a Friday song of the week, where we're just going to put, one of us from the program is going to post a song, an Arabic song each week, and hopefully that will kind of be a little input for them. And I'm going to start soliciting from them if they would like to share songs and music that they're coming across and that they're interested in. What we did do in the fall that was really successful, and I'm hoping that will become an annual event, and actually Zoom again helped us with this because of physical distance, but we did an alumni panel with our students who had graduated and gone on to do different things with their Arabic. And it was helpful because I think had we been in place, not everybody, our alumni would not necessarily have been able to all be in Iowa City. But I think that was a really good experience for our students, and precisely because they were able to see what their peers are doing and talk with each other as opposed to just with their faculty about opportunities and thinking about and what they can do with their Arabic beyond their years in college. And I got good feedback from students, and I'm hoping that it will be an annual thing where they can connect with each other and again create this kind of network and connection and help each other beyond the first few years of studying. And so I think I'm trying to think about ways we can do more of that kind of co-curricular as opposed to just faculty led. And finally, I'll just say that another success that I think has been easier to do in the Zoom world is connect students with language partners. So again, at the moment we're reaching out to native and heritage speakers on campus and in the Iowa City community. but I'm hoping that that can be something that we can do with speakers abroad. And again, people don't want to spend more time on Zoom, but that's one of the ways that even in moving forward, those are connections that we can maintain, and where the Zoom world is actually helpful for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had a presentation just last week on collaborative online international learning, which I think inspired a bunch of us to start looking for those networks that we can develop abroad for conversation partners. So you've got a couple of great ideas for that where Zoom will continue to be instrumental in the future, which is interesting. We've learned a lot this year. We have, oh good, Julie is sharing. I want anybody to jump in and share some of the ideas and ways that you create community outside of the classroom. I know Jean Janecki probably has a ton of ideas too. The student language clubs have been active online hosting game activities and movie watch parties.
Right.
And we just started a film club in the CLCL at Iowa. It's gaining a little bit of traction, I think. Anybody else have any ideas that they share for how they do the co-curricular activities to keep the language learning happening outside of the classroom? I also, and while everybody's gathering their thoughts on that, I was wondering if you have any comments on extra credit and whether or not that is the good mechanism to, sort of encourage attendance. I know everybody throws it around to try to get students to attend events, whether it was in the before times or now. And I'm not sure, does it backfire? Do you make it, or is there a way to make it part of the curriculum? I know Felix had a whole, Felix Kroner, I don't think he's here today, but he had a whole curriculum on this platform called Resli, which is now defunct, where students could earn points for attending certain things. And it was part of, and they could, they had the autonomy to choose which activities they would do. And that would be included in the entire syllabus breakdown as well.
Yes, so actually that's the direction I think our program is headed. We currently just offer extra credit, and I have not found that to be the most successful way, frankly, because, and I don't think any student needs this experience more than any other, but I have found that the students that attend are frankly the students who more or less don't actually need the extra credit and are already doing above and beyond what they need to do to succeed in the class. And they are the ones that go, and I'm happy to give them even more extra credit, but that it doesn't necessarily expand beyond that. So I think, and I'm not going to do it this year precisely because of the situation and nobody wants more Zoom commitments. But I think next year, if we are in person in the classroom, I'm going to at least pilot with the other instructors in the program, having a portion of our syllabus grade for co-curricular and cultural activities. I mean, it might just be as small as 5%, but that it's part of the grade. They get to choose which events they go to. And again, I mean, we are in a world now where it doesn't, not being able to attend the conversation hour isn't the end of it. They have, I want to frame it in such a way that they can make use of a range of resources online to either watch things or see things, etc. And have that be part of a portion of their grade, in the hopes that once enticed by this, they will continue to attend these things regardless. But yeah, like I said, we have not necessarily had the success that I would hope for with just, if you can attend, and that might be the size of our program, because we're a small program, because we only have a minor, we don't have necessarily the number of students that other programs do. Or our students are just, I don't know, overwhelmed with other classes, and it sometimes falls to the end of their list. I don't know, but I'm hoping that kind of mandatory attendance will generate some kind of voluntary continuation.
Well, we can talk about how to use the platform called Goose Chase, which I think has a great way to gamify this, right? And so you can make a
Right.
whole bunch of different quests that the students can complete for points, and I think
Right.
that it's kind of fun for them. I think making that as part of the co-curricular curriculum is good. I don't know if anybody had anything in the chat that they want to jump out and say.
And my hope is, though, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily, but my hope is that they would realize it's a really easy way to gain their 5 or 10% of their grade. I mean, that's the thing that they don't. I'm just like, you're not, this is just, I mean, you're obviously learning from it and an exposure and etc. But yeah, this is just, I mean, it's 5% that they just get handed. So
let me jump in for just a second. This is Dan again. There are a number of suggestions in the chat, and we can continue this in a minute. Our time basically is up for the half hour, but we are happy to stick around for a few more minutes to talk further. One thing that occurs to me, particularly within the context of this work-life balance and not overwhelming ourselves, is that it's, particularly a group like this might be very much interested in exploring ways of creating activities that students can do that we can share amongst ourselves. So that, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same language, but you can come up with kind of scavenger hunt types of activities or something like that, that students can perform for the extra credit or for some sort of way of showing that they're using the language outside of class, and kind of taking advantage of all these wonderful suggestions that are in the chat would be a nice place to start building on that.
Or connecting small programs across, the across institutions.
Yeah.
We used to have this thing called the Expanding Midwest Knowledge Initiative, I think it was called, and it was a way to connect small colleges and the large institutions in the Midwest. And this would be a great, sort of what's the ecosystem where you could connect with other language learners.